All right, welcome everybody to another interview, another video on AVN Desk, now on AVN Desk, this new channel. And today I have with me Stolen Rose, the creator of Zero End. It's great for you to join me today. So yeah, let me start with what was the original idea behind Zero End? It's a little bit of a unique game in terms of where it takes place, or rather the uh, I don't know what you would call it, but sort of the occultish or that kind of supernatural theme. So, yeah, where did the idea come from?
Well, I don't think it came from just one place specifically. It's just a theme that I really enjoy. But I took inspiration from World of Darkness a lot, from Hellblazer, and the setting itself was actually a long time ago. I played the game called Divi Dead, and it had this isolated academy type institution where weird stuff was going on. And I thought that was great, but I played the rest of it, and then I, it didn't really live up to the potential that I saw it could have. So I thought it would be a really cool setting to have an approach.
Was this other game also an AVN, an adult visual novel?
Yes, but it was a Japanese visual novel.
Oh, okay. So the I also talked to previous interview to Naughty Captain. He also mentioned that he I don't want to say grew up on these Japanese similar games, but he also mentioned he did used to play them. So were you are you in a similar way? That you used to play these sort of like maybe older Japanese games? Because AVNs, I think at least to me, are sort of like a new thing. Like when I think of the biggest ones, all of them were created in what, like last 5 years. So the sort of new modern AVNs don't go far, but the idea of, erotic games is pretty old.
Yeah, I actually started, I think, in 2008. I was like 15, and I played the first uh, AVN I played was Wind, A Breath of Heart, and I don't remember much about it, but I do remember it introduced me to the idea that you could take different decisions that have different outcomes in a game and have a story game that is somewhat catered to what the way you want to play it and which path you want to pursue. And then I kept playing them. I really like the Fate series. And then I played Tsukihime. That one I really liked as well. And after that, I went to lull in this. I didn't play any for a long time. And eventually, I think it was during the pandemic at some point, I randomly stumbled upon an AVN and I'm like, oh, I do remember people did make original English versions of these. So let's check some out. And I got back into them.
Do you want to say what was the first one that got you, or what really hooked you?
What got me back? Yeah, it was being a dick.
Oh, hell yeah. That's a classic for many. So you did mention you like the sort of choices being allowed. Is that the main thing that got you like now I want to do my own sort of like really both you mentioned work on this interesting idea you saw of sort of like the like a school in isolation, give it your vision and allow people to sort of have some choice over that matter.
It was partly, but I mean, I've always been very interested in writing. I have taken a lot of creative writing classes and I really enjoyed writing. And this just is a different medium where you can do so many different things that you can't do in a linear narrative, where you can mold the story around, create something that is wouldn't necessarily be possible within a novel. And it was mostly that was the draw, which brought me to want to create a non-linear story. And because I already liked aliens, I'm like, great. I had already worked on commission and for a company for some adult games, though they weren't visual novels. So at that point, I already had some experience in working on adult themed games.
Yeah, that's interesting because Zero and is your first game, right? I'm not missing something. Or
It is
at least first published, maybe? Or, well, tell me.
it is the first game I've published under the moniker Stolen Rose, but
Okay.
I've created some very short games before. I made one in RPG Maker, which was an horror adventure game, and I made another visual novel, a kinetic visual novel in Renpai,
Mm.
like 2013 or something. It was
Okay.
like 1 hour of play, so they were very short games, but it was not exactly the first thing I've made.
Well, let's talk about the main character. Let's talk about Caleb. Well, one thing I would already put out, something you do is you give the main character a name. It's not a, you know, pick your own name for the story. And in that way, he is also much more defined character than sometimes in Avians are. Sometimes they are complete blank slates. Sometimes you can influence their actions, but yours is very much, edgy. Somebody who has certain issues. We'll talk about that a bit more. But yeah, how do you think about, when it comes to this freedom of players? How do you think about when it comes to defining the main character? Um, like, how do you, I guess, do you try to balance sort of giving the choice and having a character, or how do you think about this?
Well, he was meant to be a protagonist that, well, is named and has his own character to begin with, rather than a blank slate protagonist from the beginning. And that's probably because I come from a novel writing background where that's the norm, rather than with video games where the norm would be to create your own character. And as regards to freedom of, it is restricted. It is definitely a lot more restricted than it would be with a blank slate protagonist, where any choice would make sense because the character is not defined enough to create dissonance with a certain choice. So it is definitely more limited, but I try to give as much choice as makes sense for the character. What he potentially could or would do rather than anything that would be possible within the story.
Let's talk about his character a little bit. He starts, feeling super lost, not knowing what to really do with his life, and sort of gets thrust into the story. He gets into this academy. He don't know why. He just explores it because it's interesting. There's something drawing it to him, and sort of that's how the story starts. Which I already is kind of interesting. Now we don't know this at the start. We don't know he has magical abilities at the start. We sort of learn it a little bit. Uh, but in a sense, it's kind of interesting. How can somebody who has this much power, who has this much, in a sense, fun, you could say, like somebody who can do this type of things, how can somebody like that be lost? And that's something I wanted to ask you about is, was that something you were interested in exploring? Somebody who, who is completely lost, doesn't know what to do with his life, and gets into something.
Well, because of the college setting and the age of the characters, it usually falls into a genre subset of genre that is new adult. And that's what the subject that usually gets treated within those types of stories is you have somebody who's just out of high school and suddenly they need to make these decisions that they're probably not equipped to making. They don't have the life experience to make their decisions, like even choosing their major. Even that's a massive choice. They're supposed to determine the rest of your life, career wise, at least. And you're not equipped to making that. And the feeling of being lost is appropriate for that type of setting, and which is why I wanted to um, explore that. I knew I felt like that.
Mhm.
I remember what that used to feel like, and I wanted to show it through the story.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask if any of his personalities or experiences are based on your own experiences or personality, because I've also found myself a little bit understanding of certain ways he feels.
Well, to a certain degree, every character is, and everything they go through is based on my experiences, at least secondhand. But yes, there are a lot of instances where I'm exploring their emotions and the feelings and how they deal with what's happening to them and their situation. And it might not always be obvious, not even to me, but I can find those things there. But it's more like empathy. Like I've gone through something similar and I put this character through something, and the way they react is based on their background, what's happening to them, but the deeper feeling would be the same, which is why we can relate to a person in a story losing something, even if we can't relate identically to what's actually happened, but the feelings we can relate to.
Mhm. When it comes to the plot itself, they uh, basically players, I don't think have any effect almost on the plot. I would say. Now you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, but just as one example, now this is a bit spoilerish, but I would say people should play the game at least a little bit before. But I'll try to keep it down. There is one ending you can already achieve. But the ending is basically you decide you don't want to deal with the academy. But what happens is Caleb is has this feeling that he needs to go back, and now we don't see what happens after. I'm not sure if you're planning to show what is even supposed to stay after, but he basically goes back to the academy, and that's when the first ending cuts. Now this is one area where player does get to, in a sense, choose the plot. Like he basically says, I don't want to deal with this. But when it comes to the effects, it's sort of, well, he still goes back, right? Now this connects to, Caleb not being a blank slate, but actually having a character. But how do you think about player choice specifically when it comes to plot, not when it comes to, decide which love interest you want, or sort of just some mild changes.
I can't get into it as much as I would like to, but let's take that ending, for example. What I wanted to show there was because there's a step if you go by let's say the hero's journey where the hero has the rejection of the call to action. Usually what happens is that they reject the call to action and then eventually they do it anyway. What I want to explore through that ending was a situation where the hero rejects the call to action and actually leaves. And this is sometimes referred to as the shadow journey because it's an abandonment of the struggles rather than facing whatever struggles are presented to you. You choose to back off and not deal with that. And it shows that it's meant to show that he never really managed to leave. Despite leaving from there, he didn't face whatever it was that he needed to face. So he finds himself back there anyway.
So let's go a little bit brighter, a little bit more interesting. This is something that I specifically really am interested, and it's music. I think AVNs should absolutely have music. I think it's a great tool that whenever I see an AVN not having any music at all, I'm really surprised with that step. Uh, Yours or your choice specifically in music, I'm not sure if any of it is. I think at least from what I've seen, most of it is sort of taken from somewhere. Um,
There
yep.
is one.
Okay. Do you know which one? Oh, or can you say which one? I'm wondering if I could.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine make a song for me. It's called The King of Swords. It is specifically a song made for Caleb.
Uh, can you say when it's used?
It's used near the end of chapter 2.
But yeah. So the question is, how do you think of music? What do you think the purpose of music is in AVNs?
Um, the way I go about it is I don't want it to be intrusive. I want it to set your scene. I want it to enhance the mood and make everything that's already there better rather than distracting you from what's happening. So even the placement is meant to, if the rhythm of the music is more alert, it's in a more tense situation. If it's more low, slower song, it'll be in a slower mood to come parallel with the rhythm of the story and the shots.
Yeah, and one thing that I found interesting, and I'm wondering if you thought about it. I went on YouTube, I searched up Zero End Music, and there was a playlist. I was surprised. Oh, you made it. Okay, nice. Uh, so I listened through it, and what I found interesting is I could click on a click on a song, and I could immediately imagine the scene or remember the scene it was in. Did you think about that happening? About that, especially since sometimes the music is repeated. Sometimes I know what the scene is going to be like just from hearing the music, or just remembering what the scene is going to be like just because getting the feeling from the music, which oftentimes or almost always I find the music pick very appropriate to sort of the scenes. So what you're thinking about, especially when you reuse the same music to the similar feeling scenes.
That's a bit complicated. There are certain songs that are more, they're not as used, and they're used in a very specific situation, like the romance songs for Selena or Rain. They're associated with their romance situations. So those, I imagine, are way more uh, recognizable immediately. Some songs which would be the background music for a conversation that's not as more muted, is not as intense. I imagine those aren't as recognizable as a single scene. There was some intent there with associating a specific song with a specific character or with a specific setup, plot setup.
Mhm.
But some of them are you're talking to someone, and that's
Mhm.
the background noise behind it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Especially what I found. From I'm not sure if my favorite music, but the sort of I wish I remember the names of the songs. But the one that is sort of at the start when he comes to the academy, the sort of da 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 da. Da. It's kind of interesting because it's both. It feels very much university AVN, just sort of like a music, but also it's weirdly sort of, I don't know if supernatural, but sort of has the feeling uh, of something is going to happen. But I just wanted to say nice pick.
Honestly, I think that song itself, if we were to listen to it without context, it would be, yeah, it's more jazzy, it's more
Mhm,
upbeat. But because it's overlaid on top of a gray background
mhm,
with already you have the setup of something weird is going on, it creates that mixture that makes
mhm,
it a bit ominous
mhm.
in the context.
Yeah,
But
that's yeah.
yeah, I didn't what I wanted with the first impression of the game was that, oh yeah, it is suggested to be college AVM, and I wanted for more and more weird stuff to keep happening, and for the mood to gradually get darker.
In your game, you have uh, I don't know what to necessarily call it because I'm not sure if I've seen it anywhere else, but let's say a deity system. When you start a game, you pick a deity, or you can pick to not have any, which I'm still not sure what changes. I think I played one without it, and I'm not sure if I noticed difference, but a little bit ago. But basically, they influence your skill points, which we'll also go into, but they also influence at least few decisions. I've noticed some differences when I play different ones, some different scenes. But what was the idea behind this system?
Um, it's supposed to be sort of a class system, but what I wanted was more that you get a different deity intervention. I thought that was cool when I saw it in, I think, Wrath of the Righteous. In there are very few moments, but at some points where the stars align, you can get an intervention from your chosen deity, which I thought was really cool. And I want to have something like that, but more focused, where you can see a lot more of that. I didn't anticipate how much more work that would put on top of my already existing work, but I think it still brings more diversity, more you can replay it, and it is meant to be replayed multiple times. So I wanted there to be a different experience, even if you choose the same type of choices throughout the
Mhm.
game. So you can still have things feeling different. Maybe you have higher stats in this situation, so you can do something that you weren't able to do last time.
Yeah, and well, that connects to the skill system as well. How do you think of that? Especially, I mean, something that is oftentimes the most controversial is locking choices behind skill points. That um, do you think, like, is it for you mostly just cosmetics, something to give players? Are they meant to play in terms of, okay, now I'm going to optimize for this stat so I can unlock this decision? How do you think of that?
No, it was meant for people to start optimizing, and I specifically didn't want to have anything very significant behind stat checks. And also, I wanted there to, you can do it a different way anyway. This is just faster or it gives you a cooler scene.
Mm,
But I didn't want any progression locks. I didn't want to make the player feel like they lost a lot. I wanted them to feel like, oh, it's super cool when it happens, but it's fine if it didn't, because I didn't have the stats for it. But when it does, it's really cool. But also, there are different situations that also might be cool if you don't have the stats, which I also intended. I didn't want there to be So, if you do have the stat, it's a cool scene, but otherwise it's just nothing. I want it to be still cool, but in a different way.
Now you still have a lot of development left, right? Uh, at least from what we know, there should be 4 chapters, at least from what the gallery scene says. Um, but how much have you thought about how in the future they're gonna have effect?
Um, they definitely have less and less of an impact because as the releases get longer and longer, I don't want to impede too much. Um, in the first releases, there were some scenes that you couldn't access unless you had one specific deity. But as I'm progressing, I've just naturally let those scenes go and stopped locking content behind deities. And now it's more flavor than it was at the beginning. It's also easier to handle for me and manage.
You could come up with like a lore explanation for it. You know, Caleb is becoming more powerful, therefore he relies less on the his deities and more on himself. And
I still want there to be some cool interventions from deities because I like them just as this non-character that
Mhm.
exists and they might help you, they might not. You don't know why they help you when they do or they don't. But clearly there is some significance, but it's never obvious to you why it happens.
But that actually bridges me to the sort of main difference or main thematical difference, and it's the magic and everything associated with this. Um, so yeah, where did this idea for you come from? Why did you want to include? Again, we're not talking. There've been some magic avians. There's one that's like Harry Potter, basically, but in avian. But this one is very unique in terms of it doesn't just take one, maybe some magic or some occultish thing, but it's very broad. A lot of different things, demonic things maybe. A lot of different themes are basically taken in and are a thing in this world. So yeah, what was the idea behind it, and how do you think of it?
To be honest, it wasn't so much that I added the magical stuff. It would be rather than if I wrote one that wasn't completely in the mundane world, I would be removing those parts. That's just naturally what I like to write. It's what excites me the most.
Hmm.
And if I didn't include them, it would be removing them rather than
Hmm.
they weren't added for a specific reason rather than I really like that and I think it's cool and I wanted it in my story.
Hmm. So it's a very, in a sense, it's very you. It's very something you're interested in, and yeah, in that way, even in the AVN itself, it's not taken. Like when those things started happening, nobody's surprised. Even I don't know how sure we are about this, but it almost seems like this is real life. Like even, in today's world, we have people who, like tarot cards, for example. That is one thing that takes thing in a game. Now you could say, maybe they actually even in this life fully work and fully can, or at least in the way they are supposed to show somebody's. I don't know much about this stuff, so I'm trying to talk a little bit around it. But can show things about yourself because in the way, there is one scene, for example, in the AVN that takes place a little bit earlier when Caleb starts learning about this, just tries this and figures, oh my God, this actually works. So it is seemingly this is something like, okay, it's just working, just not many people try this.
Yeah, that was kind of the way I took it from how, yeah, this stuff, you can do it.
Mm.
You can do a tarot spread, try to guess the future. Just people don't believe that it works.
Mhm.
And that's about it. People who have tried it in the story have noticed that it does, and they've devoted their lives to working with this. And people who don't believe that it works don't believe that it works. They don't believe these things exist. And I realize it's a bit not as well explained as I should have because I don't have enough characters who are not part of that world. I think Chloe, the bartender, is one
Hmm.
who doesn't believe that at first, but if you go for her ending, she eventually does. But I feel like I was missing some characters who just no, I don't believe that exists.
Um, well, maybe we'll put a little bit of pause into this, and I want to go into something you've said of not explaining things well, because I've seen that as a, I don't know if we call this criticism or whatever you want to call it from some people of sort of it's trying to be very um mysterious or sort of like hiding a lot of things. So how do you think about writing when it comes to there is very little exposition. I guess we could say sort of just Caleb explaining something, or even other characters explaining something. A lot of things, you might understand more once you replay it. So yeah, how do you think of that? Because all characters act as if everything that's happening is normal, and in a sense that you as a player sort of understand what's going on, because they understand what's going on.
It was meant to be somewhat obtuse from the beginning because it's a mystery, and finding out what's going on, why these things are happening, is a large part of that. I did want the player to feel like they don't understand what's going on. But there is also something that I didn't account for, which is that not everyone knows as much about paranormal occult
Hmm.
lore as I do. And actually, I had, for example, my girlfriend, when I had her play the game, uh, she asked me what divination was. I was like, how do you not know what divination is? That's like super basic concept. But I then realized that, oh, right, there's some stuff that I figured divination is a thing in real life, a thing that people did, throwing bones, runes. It's been, it has existed, so I don't need to explain it. And then I realized, well, no, actually, not everyone knows about that or what it's called. So eventually, I implemented the highlight
Mm.
system, which was not my intention at the beginning, but it came as a result of needing to explain things outside of what's specific to the story and explain concepts that mm, I figured eventually I realized that not everyone knows.
Yeah, that's actually very interesting, and I was going to ask about it because, yeah, I've said that there is very little exposition from the characters themselves, but in a sense, these explanations act as an exposition, and it felt a little bit sort of, uh, yeah, I guess afterthought. I mean, you kind of said it, right? You just didn't expect that, or rather, you expected that people would know these things. So yeah, that's interesting that. That in a sense it had to come as an um, as something you made after. It kind of reminds me a little bit of I don't know if you played Project Passion, uh, uh, or a lot of different. I think sci-fi usually have this. They have some sort of like codex, some sort of like new thing comes into new thing is mentioned, and you have this whatever like phone or something that has like Wikipedia information about different things in the world. I was wondering, have you ever thought about, maybe doing something like that just to be more, I guess, in what would be the word, sort of immersive, some sort of book of concepts?
There is a codex.
Yeah.
but it's not like it could be improved. But there is one in the game. There, it's not something I can really do right now, as
Mhm.
I don't really have enough time for it. But once I'm finished with the game, I'll do a pass on all quality of life and add as much of that as possible.
Okay, so with that, let's go back into um uh I need a unifying name for all of this. I don't know, like occult symbolism or something. So is this how you put something in a game? It's just what your understanding of it is, be it the tarot cards, the magic, the different species, I guess, sort of the succubi, the hunters, and everything. How much is your own creation, and how much is just something you've read somewhere, you most people understand, or people who are interested in this understand.
I've tried to have things in the game that I've read about that exist, but with some of them, I took my interpretation because they're all up for
Mhm,
interpretation, and I needed maybe something for the story to work in a certain way, and I've changed those things, like the origin of succubi and vampires, like why they are always and only can be female.
mhm,
That's derived from their origin and what their curse is and why it's like that. And that part is a lot my interpretation of that origin of their curse. So for
yeah.
the most part, I try to take things that exist and can be referenced in books and old manuscripts and stuff like that. But I've also changed some of them to fit the story and the setting.
Mhm. Yeah, that's interesting because vampires is actually one of the supernatural things that I am kind of interested in. So far, I like most uh, um, Bloodlines Masquerade explanation or origin. I don't know if you've ever played it,
Yeah.
but there the origin of the vampires is that Cain was the first vampire, and then it sort of like followed from him. Can you tell a little bit about your own? I don't know if it's spoilery because that is something I didn't. I've caught some things about the vampires. I know. Again, sort of like slight spoiler, but there is one. I don't know how they called her even, but sort of big vampire or the original vampire or something among that. There are also certain things associated with it, like if they have your name, you can control them or something like that. This is also something I'm not sure if I've seen somewhere before. So can you just expand a little bit on your interpretation of that?
Um, there will be a slight spoiler for this, so
Hmm.
if anyone wants to skip, uh, all vampires and succubi originate from Lilith,
Hmm.
and that's why they can only be female because they're aspects of her. Um, they're suffering from the same curse, though each from one side of it. And the only thing that doesn't really come into play with those is having the vampire's name gives you power over it. That one I came up with almost on accident because I named the vampires Silver and Swansong, which aren't real names.
Hmm.
And I tried to figure out, okay, why would they not use their real names like ever?
Hmm.
And that was what I came up with. I was like, oh, it's because if you have their name, which is more of a demon thing usually, but I thought it worked well for the story. And it did in the sense that it can create a lot of dramatic potential.
Hmm. We've mentioned that the game is often very cryptic is the word I have written here, which is good. And a lot of the story or a lot of the understanding people need to piece together. I guess you already kind of mentioned it, but was that the intention? Are players meant to, well, one, play it multiple times because it always, especially with mystery novels or mystery AVNs, oftentimes once you play it once and then you get a second try, a lot of things start making sense with all the context, and it makes it much more enjoyable experience, I would even say. So was that also the intention? Is was the goal people should play it multiple times?
Yes, it was the intention. It still is the intention. That's how I designed the game with the idea that somebody will play multiple times. And the mystery and feeling lost again was the intention behind it, though I don't know if it was a good choice, but it was the choice I made. And you are supposed to go through it again and understand what every little bit of awkward information I left that you glazed over the first time, what that meant and the significance of all these little things that you can see the next time you go through.
Mhm. Um, and yeah, I was wondering in that way, people who don't know much about this might start being a little bit confused. But I was wondering if it works on the other side. Do people, and I don't know if you had people who fully understand uh, of most things that are presented, most of the occult stuff, most of the um, things, will they be able to maybe predict parts of the story? Will they be able to sort of connect things that, let's say, an average player who has average understanding of these things wouldn't be able to?
I don't think so. It will be more obvious what's going on, what why things are happening. Some parts will be clearer, but I don't think it'll help anyone figure out where the plot is going because the plot is driven by the characters more than the theme and the paranormal. It is their actions, their trauma, their backstories that inform what will happen in the story rather than the paranormal stuff.
Specifically, something we haven't really talked about is the adult aspect of the adult visual novels, of course. Um, Well, I guess the main one of the questions we did talk about it a little bit at the start, but what was the thinking behind making this an adult visual novel? As far as you mentioned you made some kinetic novel in the past. I'm not sure if that one was adult or
Yeah.
okay, there was just no. Um, so yeah, what was the idea behind? Because in a sense, many of the things, many of the story would work without the sex scenes, so or without the adult content in general. So what was the thinking there?
Um, I don't think I had a specific plan on why I'm making it an adult visual novel. It was more like I was playing them, I was enjoying them back then, and I figured, yeah, let's do it. I was in the community at that point, though, as usual, just looking through, not engaging that much, but I was seeing other people's works, and I was like, I've already done a few for commissions. Might as well give it a try. That was it. I wasn't specifically aiming for something
Mhm.
with it being an ABN. I just enjoyed them, so I did one.
There are still new things being explored. Specifically, one of the characters is how would you say it, succubi or succubus? I never know how to properly.
Succubus is the singular and
Yeah, yeah.
succubi is the plural.
Never know how to spell these. Um, so let's just talk about her specifically, because she is that. So one, she is sort of like, well, kind of depends how you take it. She is either like two people or she's sort of like one person, a bit two personalities. Um, but yeah, because of that, there's a lot of very new experiences that players have probably never experienced before. The sort of and it takes a lot of scenes actually play this out. Sort of her saying, "Hey, I will not cheat on you. It doesn't matter that this is somebody there is something that's dragging me. I'll try." So yeah, how do you when was the choice made to make this a different kind of character, and how do you think about exploring that?
Actually, that's a really fun subject because I think Bahrain illustrates a lot of the creative process. So her first introduction was where she's very seductive, very upfront. And then I wrote her in a second scene, and she was very timid. And I was like, okay, that's not correct. I'm writing the character wrong. I thought about going back to write her again to be more, to have more passion and energy and be
Hmm.
more whatever, like what she was in the first scene. But
Hmm.
then I figured, well, maybe she is both of those things at alternate times. So instead of going and correcting that, I figured, all right, why would she be like this in one scene and like this in another scene? Because I thought that was a cool idea that
Hmm.
it still adds to the mystery of why this person is behaving not like she was 15 minutes ago. And that's what I came with. Like, since her behavior is like that, it would make sense she would be a succubus. So I came with the idea of having two personalities, two souls within a single body, and then them being in a sort of conflict.
At one point, I found it also a little bit I don't know if scary is the right word, but it's a very, especially since Caleb also isn't I don't think he necessarily has any sort of like mental problems or something, but he's finding himself out. He's still figuring things out. And one scene specifically, Reina has a lot of, I don't know what you want to call it, but intuitions or special abilities to feel other people uh, because she's a succubus. Um, so, for example, during sex, she can tell the feelings of the other person about her. One of the feelings is, does the other person love her? Now, thankfully, the first, or I'm not sure if the first time they had sex, but one of the times they had sex, Reina could, for the first time ever, actually feel somebody loves her. Now, to some extent, to me at least, that's a bit almost like intrusive, like somebody knowing your deep feelings about you. So how do you have you considered that, as in somebody in some ways this could be like a perfect relationship because she's never doubtful about what the other person feels, but also the other person doesn't get to um, almost like hide his feelings, or how would you want to call
I never really considered that because in my head it was never like mind reading. It was you can feel intense emotions
it?
during sex. So it would be like she's used to feeling lust from the other person, and this time it was love, and that was why she was surprised by it. But it was not meant to be, oh, that's what he's thinking about specifically. But if he was sorrowful, she could feel that he was sorrowful
Hmm.
while it was happening. It was just more, you can feel their emotions intensely while that's happening, but not really the reason or their thoughts.
Okay. But I guess I would just throw you an open question. Any sort of interesting or unique aspects you have tried to pursue in the adult part of the visual novel that you can say?
Well, I tried to see how interesting the situation can be, given that they're sometimes paranormal entities. But I think with Rain is where it shows most. I don't think there's anything all that unusual about the other ones. But with Rain being two people, that gave a very obvious setup.
Um, okay, well, with that, is there anything uh you think I missed out? Anything you'd like to sort of discuss or
Oh, you know what?
want people to know?
I just remembered that still going back to Rain, what I wanted to show was that conflict within,
Mhm.
which is a prevalent theme to all the story. The struggle within, fighting with yourself. You'll see it mirrored in a lot of characters. But I realized later that I was with Rain, I was exploring uh like a bipolar
Mhm.
disease type situation because there's her succubus side, which is having fun and going out there and experiencing life and living to the fullest. And then her other side comes in and has to pick up the pieces of everything that she might have messed up. And it really reflected how I felt sometimes with bipolar. And I realized that it was something that I was exploring, even though I wasn't trying to at the start.
That's a little bit. So I don't know much about sort of somebody having a bipolar disease. But when it comes to Reina, or at least sort of my understanding is, you know, it's not that she's two people. It's, or at least the way I see it, or the way I understand it, it's there is Reina, that's the shy, that's the timid character, and then there is this, well, demon, right? There's this type of possession, this type of thing that is also, as you said, occupying her body, or being another soul in her body. Um, so, do you see there is a difference, or what? I guess the question is, what exactly is she?
That's a complicated
Mm,
subject. They are, in essence, the same person. They're two souls within one body, and they can switch. The the succubus part soul was infused at birth, but it did not become active until her first sexual experience. And since then, she's been dealing with an increasingly more prevalent part of her psyche that keeps shifting, and she needs to deal with inside of her being two people, but on the outside, being a single person. So she is responsible for what the other does,
mhm,
even though she doesn't want to be, which is where her conflict comes from.
mhm. Um, yeah, well, I'm excited to see more about that. And to that extent, there's a couple more questions. So, maybe again, without spoilers, if you would tell how much of Zero End is planned out for you, how do you, when it comes to, let's say, we are sort of told there's going to be 4 chapters, but how much would you say you have already planned out? Like, do you already have an ending? Do we know there's going to be multiple endings? How much can you say, really?
I have everything mapped out, but it's not planned out with an outline. I have an outline of the next chapter, um, and then the I have the important key events that need to happen and all the branching and where the with each ending is going to end up. But that one isn't outlined. I don't have bullet points with this happens, this happens, this happens for that part. But it was always planned out to a certain degree. I think when I started writing it, I wrote about half of the first release. And by that time, I had the plan for the whole thing. Some things have fallen off. I've taken out things that were unnecessary. There were some endings that I would have liked to implement, but they didn't fit. I couldn't fit them inside the story to make sense. So a lot of the plan may fall off, but the skeleton of the final chapters and the ending is set up.
Um, is there any particular themes or maybe scenes that you are excited for people to see? Again, that you can maybe just hint towards without spoiling.
Yes, but I can't say. There's several very important scenes that are supposed to happen by the end of chapter 3, but I can't really get into them because those are the the final. I wouldn't say twist, but it's kind of the final understandings that you have when the entire story clicks together and you understand why everything was happening and how.
Mhm.
But I can't get into it.
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, that is the biggest question everybody has is why, in a sense, resolving the marriage situation is the biggest thing, right? Exploring why did she completely leave Caleb's life and why is she back in that sense. I mean, that's the plot, right? I think. Um, Oh, something I did miss, and I want to just quickly go back to. Um, Something we've seen more and more in AVNs is um, a lot of the people who make the games is collaborating with others to include characters from others and things like that. I was wondering, have you ever thought about that? Do you collaborate with anybody on the visuals, the music, anything?
We had a cameo uh, with Mr. Pocket Rocket when we had our characters featured in posters, but that
Okay.
was about it. I haven't done any other collaboration. No one's approached me, and I'm not really one to approach. So,
Do you have your favorite AVNs? Anything you'd recommend to people to try out? Anything that particularly maybe inspires you or that you like to go back to some of your favorites?
uh, yeah, I have a lot of them. Steins Gate. Um,
Now that's more of a just a visual novel, right?
it is. It's not an adult visual novel. I still think it's one of the best, though.
Hmm.
One that's an adult visual novel would be Tsukihime. I think it just got an English version of the remake, which I haven't played yet, but I would like to because it's great. And it was very significant for me at the time when I played it first. When I think about it, there's some good scenes in a lot of them, but I don't know if something that I would go out recommending.
Hmm.
Thinking Grisaia no Kajutsu, there was a scene that I really liked, Angelic Howl, which was based on the inspired. It was inspired by what's that novel called? Lord of the Flies. That was
Oh.
a really cool segment inside the visual novel that was okay. Otherwise, wasn't too bad.
All right. Well, with that, how can people support you? What is the best way for people who are interested in your work, interested in seeing Zero Cent continued to be made and finished, and maybe future projects if you'd be if you go. Well, I guess that's also a question. Do you have anything planned for after Zero?
I do, though I'm not. entirely sure it's going to be an AVN. I have a sort of immersive sim RPG to the side scroller type game in my head that I'm trying to figure out. I have a combat system for it, but it's probably not going to be an AVN.
Mhm. And how can people support you?
I just buy it on Steam or get it on Patreon if you want, if you prefer it. On Patreon, there's more segmented releases. Steam gets the entire chapter
Mhm.
at a time, but whatever people want to get it.
Yeah, and if anyone's interested, they'll be able to find it in the description. Well, with that, Stolen Rose, thank you for joining me today. Is there anything you'd like to say before we say goodbye?
No, thanks for having me. It was a great talk. Always love talking about the game, though my friends are kind of tired of it, so
Well,
this
thank
was a
you.
great opportunity.
Yeah, well, thank you for joining me today. It was great fun, and I'll see everybody with, well, some another time. Thank you, and bye bye.